Drew, you have a background in retail media. You've kind of seen this rise, the rise of retail media. Why is it so appealing to retailers in particular right now?
Sure. So let me start by saying I was at Walmart for 13 years, and all the while building out the retail media business and advertising on the site and stores and so on. And in its infancy, it was a profit center. So it was meant to offset the cost of building an e-commerce solution or paying for new innovation models and so on. Over time, that changed to be much more of a customer-centric advertising play and beneficial for the advertisers. But I think in the early stage of any RMN, it is truly built as a profit center, new business model for retailers to offset some of the rising costs of just operating retail in a very fragmented retail ecosystem.
I think what's interesting is early on people were thinking that retail media networks retailers were going to set up almost like content and publishing studios and publishing arms, because that is the opposite of a profit center. That's a cost center.
Yes, right.
So now it seems much more around sort of data and having advertisers benefit from the audiences that they can curate and the data within.
Yeah, and I think that approach of creating kind of a publisher-like experience in retail was in an effort to buy the audience or to get the stickiness up on the site and so on. I think you're right. That model wasn't necessarily a requirement for these businesses, and they found out that they could be growth engines and they could ultimately do amazing things with just the data alone. But I do think that there is a long-term play where a retailer will start to look like a publisher, because what we're missing in digital retail in general is that discovery. And you have that in the store where you walk down the aisles and you can find the right products and you can experience the brands in different ways. That doesn't truly exist yet online. And so I do think in time there is a play for that to come back, but it'll look very different than it does today.
Discovery is an interesting segue, because how many retail media networks can the marketplace sustain if every retailer wants to create a retail media network? Are we going to get to a place where we've got 1,000, or are we going to be at a place where it's just Amazon and just Walmart and just the big players?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've wrestled with this a lot. So there are 100 retailers in the US that are generating over 10 billion in GMV. And so technically the addressable market is pretty massive as it relates to advertising. I like to say that if a retailer does everything right in its infancy, not even in a hyper-competitive way, but if they just build a decent platform, that they should stand to be able to capture about 1% of their GMV in advertising dollars. And so that market should be huge. But you're right, brands can't manage 100 partners. And so you see consolidation happening, and you see network approaches that exist today. And I think that is one of the models. You're right, the majority of monies are going to Amazon and Walmart and a few other players. But there is probably there's still a standout opportunity for a couple of key retailers that should allow them to create some kind of differentiated offering that other players can't do today. So I think, to answer your question directly, there's probably 6, I've seen research from Foresight that says about 6 retailers is what an average brand can manage, and then you have to find that network approach.
You know, you talk about the number of retail media partners that a brand can manage. It also seems like for the promise of these retail media networks to come to fruition, that brands and agencies and retailers kind of have to find new ways of operating with each other.
Yeah.
What has your experience been in that vein?
This is what I tell every agency partner, technology company, retailer. The reality is that relationship between a merchant and a supplier is sacred. And so the dollars and relationship that happens from trade to brand in the market is so incredibly important to retail today that you have to be respectful of that relationship. And what often happens when a retailer is jumping into retail media or a technology player is trying to jump into the space is they they focus on their KPIs, on extracting as much money as possible. And that ends up creating friction between the merchant-supplier relationship. And so I think what is sacred to this in general, and what is very important for people to remember, is that this is not a standard advertising play. This is not a type of relationship like Google might have with their brands. There is a much stronger nuance that everybody in this space needs to understand and really respect the existing retail infrastructure to support it.
So it's interesting. It's almost like in this rush to mine the data and target the consumer and make all of these connections. Sounds like you're saying that a big part of making these retail media networks work in the future comes back to the humanness and the human relationships.
Exactly. And there is absolutely a play for best-in-class technologies in this space. There's absolutely a play for really strong agency partners with sophistication in it. But at the end of the day, you have to live inside a retailer, and you have to be willing to play by their rules to really make this thing scale.
We have a crystal ball moment,
Yeah.
and we're looking at this market 12 months from now. What's a big headline that you think we'll see from a retail media network standpoint?
I think you're going to see some type of play in consolidation at a network level. There are going to be some really neat technology acquisitions. There are going to be big plays in AI, which is kind of a given. But more so, and this is the piece that I'm really excited about, I think we're at an inflection point in retail media where we're moving away from this very early nascent type business to something that requires a lot more sophistication. And in that, you're going to see a lot of change in the way in which people sell it today, and the partners and companies that do that, in some of the legacy technologies that have powered it so far, towards more of a owned approach. And retailers that are coming into the fray now can use all of the learnings from the past to leapfrog incumbents and really start to own much more of the ecosystem.
So first mover advantage, maybe not.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, Amazon as an example is going to continue to win in this space. But I think there's a lot that new players can learn from all that we've gone through at Walmart and others to really leapfrog.
Thank you so much, Drew.